My name is Kira Whitmore. I'm 32 years old, and I've always believed that if you build your life carefully enough, nothing really falls apart without warning. Not overnight, not without signs. I work in commercial real estate development in Chicago. My weeks are structured: site visits, investor meetings, long timelines that require precision. I don't like chaos, I don't gamble on uncertainty, and I don't ignore patterns when they start to form. For the longest time, I thought my relationship reflected that same stability. Marcus Hale is 31, charismatic in a way that doesn't feel forced. He doesn't try to be the center of attention, but somehow he always becomes it. He works in event marketing, fast-paced, social, constantly surrounded by people who respond to him. We had been together for just under 2 years, living together for 8 months in my condo downtown. The mortgage is mine, always has been. We split groceries, utilities, the day-to-day things. It felt balanced on paper. In reality, it wasn't. Marcus had a sharp personality, confident, direct, sometimes dismissive in a way he framed as honesty. He didn't hide it. If he thought something or someone was boring, he made that clear. And when I did something for him, something thoughtful, something structured, he reacted with excitement, but not appreciation. There's a difference. I addressed it early, told him I wouldn't stay in a dynamic where I felt taken for granted. He said I was too sensitive. We moved forward anyway. Last month, I booked a trip to Paris for his birthday. It wasn't spontaneous. I used airline miles, reserved a boutique hotel near the Seine, planned dinners, mapped out the schedule. I told him 3 weeks in advance so he could arrange his work. When I told him, he smiled, said, "Good, I needed something like this." Not thank you, just approval. A week before we left, we were on the couch after dinner. He went to shower and left his Apple Watch charging on the kitchen counter. I was clearing plates when the screen lit up. I wasn't trying to snoop. It was directly in my line of sight, a message preview. The name was one I recognized. Ava, his ex-girlfriend. They dated for 3 years. He told me she was immature, unreliable, said he had blocked her. The message preview wasn't neutral. A few seconds later, the full message came through. My girlfriend is taking me to Paris. Want to meet up there? The wink mattered more than the words. I stood there for a moment, not touching the watch, just reading what was already visible. That was enough context. He had initiated contact, and it wasn't casual. It was an invitation. When Marcus came out of the shower, I was back on the couch, calm, exactly where I had been before. I didn't confront him immediately. I prefer clarity over reaction. If I address something, I do it once. 10 minutes later, his watch lit up again. Another message. Depends. You sharing the hotel? Marcus laughed from the kitchen. Not nervous, not defensive. Amused. That laugh told me everything. Playful, engaged, comfortable. Not someone shutting down a mistake. At that point, I wasn't confused. I was done. But I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I asked him something simple. Are you excited about Paris? He looked at me like the answer was obvious. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? I nodded. Then I asked, is there anything or anyone you want to see while we're there? He didn't hesitate. No, just the usual stuff. He held eye contact when he said it. Calm, convincing. That was the moment something settled into place for me. It wasn't just the message. It was the ease of the lie, the comfort, the absence of hesitation. So I adjusted my plans. The next morning, I went into my office early and closed the door. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I opened the airline confirmation. 2 round-trip tickets, same reservation, same return, booked through my account, which meant I had full control. I didn't act out of anger. I acted out of alignment. If Marcus wanted to invite his past into something I had built, I wasn't going to compete for space in it. I canceled his return flight, left the departure intact. He would still go to Paris. He just wouldn't be coming back with me. Then I searched Ava. Barcelona. It didn't take long to confirm. A short flight from Paris. Close enough to turn an idea into something real. I booked a one-way ticket for him. Paris to Barcelona. 3 days into the trip. Same name, same details, clean execution. I forwarded the confirmation to an old email he rarely checked. Not hidden. Just delayed. That evening, he asked if we should make restaurant reservations in advance. I told him I had already handled it. Technically, I had. And for the first time in a long while, I felt completely certain about something. We landed in Paris on a Thursday morning. The flight was uneventful. Marcus slept most of the way, leaning against the window, his breathing slow and even, like nothing in his world required adjustment. I spent part of the flight reviewing a site proposal, part of it just watching. Not him, the situation. There's a difference between reacting to something and understanding it. By then, I wasn't trying to decide what to do anymore. That decision had already been made in my office, behind a closed door, with a confirmed itinerary in front of me. Everything after that was execution. At the hotel check-in, Marcus glanced around and made a small face. This is smaller than I expected. It wasn't. The listing was accurate. Boutique hotel, central location, walking distance to the Seine. Exactly what I had planned. We're in central Paris, I said calmly. Space trades off with location. He shrugged, rolling his shoulders like the detail wasn't worth holding on to. I just thought it'd be nicer. I didn't respond to that. I used to. Used to explain, clarify, adjust. Now I just noted it. Another small confirmation of something I already understood. That night, we walked along the river, lights reflecting off the water, couples passing by, the kind of atmosphere people describe as romantic. Marcus spent half the walk on his phone, not even trying to hide it. I didn't need to see the screen. The angle of his body, the rhythm of his attention shifting away from me, it was enough. On the second night, we had dinner reservations. A place I had booked weeks in advance. Quiet, intimate, the kind of setting where conversation naturally slows down. Marcus barely engaged. His phone rested near his lap, screen lighting up every few minutes. I could see the faint reflection in his wine glass, the subtle smile he didn't quite suppress. At one point, I asked him a direct question about work, something neutral. He answered, but his attention was split, half with me, half somewhere else, or someone else. That was the second confirmation. Not suspicion, certainty. The next morning, day 3, I told him I had planned something different. A surprise, I said, pouring coffee into a cup and sliding it toward him. That got his attention. What kind of surprise? You'll see. Just pack a smaller bag. We'll head out after breakfast. For the first time on the trip, he looked genuinely excited. That detail didn't go unnoticed. He assumed it was something romantic, something thoughtful, something that reinforced the version of the relationship he believed we had. He trusted me to manage logistics, because I always did. We checked out of the hotel mid-morning. He didn't question it beyond surface curiosity. Where are we going? He asked as we got into the car. Airport, I said. He frowned slightly. Why? Plans shifted. That was enough for him. That was always enough for him. At the airport, I moved through everything with the same efficiency I use in my work. Check-in, security, timing, no hesitation. When we reached the gate, I handed him the printed boarding pass. He looked at it, then looked at me, then back at the ticket. Paris to Barcelona? There was a pause. Not long. Just enough for realization to start forming. I thought we were staying in Paris all week. I adjusted the plan, I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. Why? And that was the moment. The exact point where the truth moved from internal to external. I kept my tone even. I figured since you invited Ava to meet you in Paris, it would be more efficient for you to meet her closer to where she lives. The shift in his expression was immediate. Not guilt. Not confusion. Anger. How do you even know about that? I didn't raise my voice. Your Apple Watch. Notification came through while you were in the shower. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You were going through my stuff? I didn't touch it, I said. I read what was visible. That's out of context. There it was. Deflection before accountability. It wasn't ambiguous, I replied. You initiated contact, you invited her, and you continued the conversation. He shook his head, a short laugh under his breath. It was a joke. I held his gaze. Adults don't joke like that with exes while living with someone else. The boarding announcement started in the background. Passengers began lining up. The timing wasn't accidental. I handed him the ticket. This is your flight. His jaw tightened. You're serious right now? Yes. So what? You're just sending me to Spain like that? I'm removing myself from a situation you already created. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You're overreacting. No, I said. I'm responding. There was a difference. A very clear one. They haven't even agreed to meet, he added quickly. You're making this into something bigger than it is. I didn't argue that point. Whether she agreed or not wasn't the issue. You opened the door, I said. What happens after that isn't relevant to me. The final boarding call echoed through the gate. He looked at the ticket again, then at me. Waiting. For what? I wasn't sure. An apology? A reconsideration? A shift? There wasn't one. I stepped back slightly, creating space. Your flight is boarding. His expression hardened. So that's it? Yes. He stared at me for a few seconds longer, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. Then he took the ticket. Not because he agreed, because there were no other immediate options. I didn't wait for him to walk away. I turned and headed in the opposite direction. No hesitation. No second glance. Once I cleared the gate area, I went straight to the airline counter and confirmed my own return flight to Chicago. Same date, upgraded seat. There was no reason to sit in discomfort on the way home. By the time I stepped outside to the taxi line, my phone was already vibrating. Calls, messages, then longer messages. The pattern was predictable. First, what the hell is wrong with you? Then, you misunderstood. Then, you embarrassed me in public. Not once at the beginning did he say he was sorry. That mattered. So I blocked him. Not temporarily. Not as a tactic. Completely. Number, messaging apps, location sharing. Gone. I don't negotiate in real time with someone who only recognizes the boundary after it's enforced. I got into the car and turned my phone to airplane mode. Silence felt cleaner, more accurate. On the flight back, I didn't replay the conversation. I reviewed the next steps. We lived together, but the condo was mine. Legally, structurally, completely. That simplified everything. By the time I landed in Chicago, I had already emailed building management, requested deactivation of his key fob, told them I would update the resident list the next day. No confrontation, no scene, just procedure. Because that's what this was. Not revenge. Resolution. By the time Marcus landed in Barcelona, he no longer had access to my home. That wasn't symbolic. It was already done. When I got back to my condo in Chicago, I didn't sit down. I didn't pause to process. I moved. Clothes first, folded, organized into garment bags, not thrown, not damaged, just removed. Then shoes, toiletries, his laptop, chargers, documents. Everything separated, labeled, accounted for. I recorded a short walkthrough video on my phone as I worked. Open drawers, packed boxes, clear visuals. Not because I expected a legal dispute, but because clarity eliminates revision later. This wasn't emotional. It was administrative. By the time I finished, the space looked like it had before he moved in. Cleaner, actually. Quieter. My phone stayed on airplane mode longer than it needed to. When I finally turned it back on, the notifications came in all at once. Missed calls, messages, voicemails. The shift in tone was immediate. At first, it was anger. You're insane. This is completely out of line. You don't get to make decisions like this for me. Then confusion. What is this even about? You're blowing this way out of proportion. Then, slowly, panic. You blocked me? Kira, answer your phone. Where am I supposed to go? That progression told me more than anything he actually said. Still no apology. Not at the beginning. I didn't respond. Instead, I did one thing. I unblocked him briefly, just long enough to send a single message. Your belongings are packed and documented. Building access has been removed. Coordinate a pickup time next week through the concierge. No emotion. No explanation. Just information. Then I blocked him again. Within an hour, he emailed me. Subject line, "Are you serious?" The tone had shifted again. Less aggressive, more controlled. He said he thought we would talk when he got back. He said I overreacted. He said it was just texting. That word just kept appearing. Just a message, just a joke, just nothing. He also added something else. Ava didn't even agree to meet. That part almost made me pause. Not because it changed anything, because it didn't. I replied once. Inviting your ex to intersect with a trip funded by your partner is not a joke. It's a decision. I don't stay in relationships where that feels normal. I added something practical. You have your own savings. You work remotely. You have family. You are not stranded. Then I stopped responding. His next email was different. Softer. Can you just let me come home and we reset? Reset. Like this was a glitch. Like something temporary had malfunctioned and needed to be restarted. I stared at that word longer than I expected. Then I typed one sentence. No, I didn't elaborate. I didn't explain boundaries again. There was nothing left to clarify. After that, I blocked his email. Set a filter so anything from his address was automatically deleted. Phone settings adjusted to silence unknown numbers. Not dramatic. Efficient. 3 days later, he reached out from a different email. Asked if I would at least pay for his flight back to Chicago. I didn't respond, because that request said everything. Not accountability. Not reflection. Convenience. A week passed without direct contact. The only updates came indirectly. A mutual friend texted me. Hey, what happened between you and Marcus? I already knew what version he had shared. People rarely narrate themselves accurately when their image is involved. I kept my response simple. He invited Ava to meet him on a trip I paid for. Then I attached a screenshot. The Apple Watch notification. Time-stamped. Clear. I don't rely on memory when evidence exists. The friend replied with one word. Understood. That was enough. I'm not interested in public narratives, just clarity where necessary. 2 days later, another email came through before the filter caught it. Different tone entirely. I made a mistake. I felt like you were distant. I just wanted to feel wanted. I didn't mean anything by it. There it was. Justification reframed as vulnerability. But still, no accountability for the action itself. I didn't respond. Didn't analyze it. Didn't try to understand the emotional reasoning behind it. Because at that point, the reasoning didn't matter. When someone responds to insecurity by reaching for someone from their past, that's not confusion. That's instinct. And instinct doesn't change because consequences show up. I blocked that email too. 3 days after that, the concierge messaged me. He scheduled a pickup. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Midday. Predictable. I adjusted my work calendar so I'd be home. Not waiting. Just available. Before he arrived, I moved all his boxes into the building's secured package room, labeled each one clearly. Clothing, shoes, office equipment, personal documents. I printed an inventory list, signed it, placed a copy on top. Again, not because I expected conflict, because structure prevents reinterpretation. At exactly 2:03 p.m., the concierge confirmed his arrival. I watched through the security feed on my phone. He looked the same. Not devastated, not reflective, just irritated. That didn't surprise me. I waited a few minutes before going downstairs. This wasn't a hallway argument. It was a transaction. When I stepped into the lobby, he turned toward me immediately. No hesitation. No pause. You really went through with this. Not hello. Not anything else. Just that. Yes, I said. He exhaled sharply. You're acting like this was some massive betrayal. I didn't respond to that framing. Instead, I said, your things are packed. Inventory is included. He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Kira, couples work through things. There it was again. That assumption. That endurance equals commitment. That depends on the thing, I said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice slightly. Sending me to Spain? That was dramatic. Petty. I met his gaze. Inviting your ex into our trip was the dramatic part. My response was administrative. That landed. Not loudly, but enough. His expression tightened. Because I hadn't reacted the way he expected. No raised voice. No emotional argument. Just structure. And he didn't know how to argue with that. He stared at me for a moment, like he was trying to find a different angle to approach from. Then he shifted. Softer tone, slower delivery. Are you seeing someone else? No. Then what is this about? Control? No, I said. Standards. That word sat between us. He exhaled through his nose, glancing away briefly before looking back at me again. I made a mistake, he said. You're acting like I cheated. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't meet her in Paris, he continued. Nothing happened. I let a small pause settle before responding. That's not the point. He frowned slightly. Then what is? You opened the door, I said. That matters more than whether you walked through it. For a second, he didn't have a response. Then he tried something else. I was bored, he said. You've been distant lately. There it was again. The justification dressed as explanation. I didn't think it was a big deal, he added. It was just texting. I held his gaze. You don't accidentally invite someone into a situation like that, I said. You decide to. His jaw tightened slightly. You're twisting this. No, I said. I'm simplifying it. That seemed to frustrate him more than anything else. Because there was no complexity to hide behind. No emotional chaos to blur the edges. Just a clear sequence. Action. Intent. Response. He looked past me toward the package room, where the concierge was already bringing out the cart with his boxes. Then back at me. I stayed in Barcelona longer, he said almost casually. Since I was already there. I didn't react. Not outwardly. She wasn't even worth it, he added. We had coffee. That's it. That was new information. Not surprising, but confirmed. You met her, I said. It wasn't a question. He hesitated, just for a second. Yeah, he said, but it didn't mean anything. I nodded once. I hope that clarified things for you. He stared at me like he expected more. A reaction. A shift. There wasn't one. The concierge rolled the cart fully into view. Boxes stacked neatly. Labels visible. Marcus glanced at them, then back at me. You really packed everything. Yes. You couldn't even wait until I got back? No. That answer landed harder than anything else I had said, because it removed the illusion that there had ever been a window for negotiation. He ran a hand through his hair again, pacing once in a small circle before stopping in front of me. I miss home, he said. The tone was different now. Quieter. Barcelona was not what I expected. I didn't respond to that. He stepped closer. We could fix this, he said. We've been together 2 years. You're just going to throw that away over a message? There it was. The framing. I corrected it immediately. Not over a message, I said. Over what the message revealed. He shook his head, almost like he didn't agree with the premise. Most people would have talked about it. Most people are not my benchmark. That stopped him. Not because it was aggressive, because it was final. There was no argument left in that space. The concierge handed him the inventory sheet. He signed it without really reading it, just like I expected. Details were never his focus. Narrative was. He loaded the first box onto the cart, then paused again. Did you ever actually love me? He asked. It wasn't casual. It wasn't even really a question. It was a test. If I said yes, there was space to negotiate. If I said no, I became the villain. So I answered honestly. I did. He blinked, caught off guard by that. Then how can you do this? He asked. Because I did, I said, and I don't tolerate being disrespected. He stared at me like those two things couldn't exist at the same time. For him, they couldn't. For me, they had to. He let out a slow breath, shaking his head. You're cold. Maybe, I said, but I'm not naive. That was the closest thing to emotion I gave him. And even that was measured. He loaded the rest of the boxes into the cart in silence. No more arguments. No more angles. Just the sound of wheels moving across the lobby floor. When everything was done, he stood there for a second longer, waiting for something cinematic. A breakdown. A last-minute shift. There wasn't one. He picked up his phone, called a ride, and stepped outside. No hug, no final words. Just exit. I watched through the glass doors as the car pulled up. He loaded the last box, got in, and the door closed. And just like that, it was done. No noise. No aftermath. Just quiet. I went back upstairs and changed the door code that same afternoon. Not out of fear, out of completion. It's been 3 months since that Tuesday. No late-night calls. No new emails. No attempts through other channels. When he realized access was closed, he stopped trying. I heard through a mutual friend that he moved back to his home state temporarily. Apparently, Barcelona didn't turn into anything meaningful. Ava was exactly who she had always been. Charming for an hour. Unreliable after that. That information didn't give me satisfaction. It just confirmed what I already understood. Patterns repeat when they're not confronted. A few weeks after everything ended, he sent a handwritten letter to my office. Not my home. I didn't open it. Had my assistant check it for anything urgent. There was nothing. I shredded it. Some people told me I handled it harshly. Others said I handled it cleanly. I'm not interested in either label. What I know is this. When someone shows you they're willing to test the boundaries of your relationship for attention, you can either debate their intentions, or you can evaluate their behavior. I evaluate behavior. He didn't accidentally send that message. He didn't accidentally add a wink. He didn't accidentally hide it. And he didn't apologize until consequences showed up. The ticket to Barcelona wasn't revenge. It was alignment, if he wanted proximity to his past. I removed myself from the equation and let that proximity exist without me funding it. There's a difference between forgiveness and self-abandonment. I'm not interested in confusing the two. Do I think he regrets it? Probably. Do I think that changes the instinct that made him send that message? No. And I would rather end 2 years decisively than spend the next 5 wondering who he's texting when his watch lights up. That's the full story. No dramatic ending. Just a boundary. Enforced once and never revisited.